Bueno, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the Foundation for the invitation. I want to thank you all for being here. And I'd like to thank Manuel for my introduction. Manuel is a person that I respect, not only professionally, but also personally, because I know he's a good man. I know his family. We are good friends with his son-in-law and his daughter. So it's a pleasure to have been introduced by Manuel. Well, let's get started. It's been 6 months, so it is good to tell you what we received and what we have done. We received a situation that was terrible, the worst heritage in history, the combination of the worst of Rodrigazo, the Alfonsín Menem hyperinflation, and the 2001 crisis. The situation of a fiscal deficit of 5 points and a quasi-fiscal deficit of almost 10. So the consolidated deficit is 15 GDP points. That is very huge. The central bank was broke and dismantled. No reserves at all. It's not that the bank did not have its own reserves. People's dollars were not there. We had $11 billion of negative reserves, 3 monetary bases in interest-bearing liabilities that, at the interest rate of that moment, implied 1 monetary base being issued every 2.5 months, with a money demand that was collapsing, rampant inflation over 200%, in addition to most prices in the economy being stopped, limited, food, exchange rates. An economist said that a clinician was needed, and I do not agree. What was needed was a team of surgeons. The clinical diagnosis was more than obvious. We have a country with fiscal cancer and metastasis, monetary, financial, and exchange and institutional metastases. This patient was closer to dying than to recovering. We had to develop a surgery that very few people expected. We did this in 5 or 6 months. We did in 5 or 6 months things that were not done in 100 years. This country had the conviction to vote a president who dared do what others want to underestimate now, but that which nobody did in 100 years. And as I say, this was done very neatly, very orderly. It was really very difficult to disentangle all of these pieces. We reached fiscal balance in month 1, something that was theoretically impossible for even a 4-year term. The deficit went down by 5 points in the first month, and that was achieved by considering, at the same time, considering the most vulnerable. So direct assistance, that is universal assistance per child, went up by 335%. So since late November to date, inflation has been 129%. So universal assistance doubled that in real terms. Also, the tarjeta alimentar, the food voucher, also went up. The first 1,000 days plan grew by 1,000%. So if we combine these three direct assistance systems, support per child, food voucher, and first 1,000 days plans, the combination of these three did not cover the basic basket of food when we took office. It was 68%, while now the combination of all these three cover 118% of the basic food basket. We also took care of the energy debt that was left by the previous government, the previous administration, a big debt with energy companies. And as I said, this deficit was corrected from month one. They said Caputo sat on the cashier. This is just January. We had a surplus on January and on February. They said it's because they are not paying to Camesa. We paid to Camesa, the electric wholesale companies. And we paid in March, April, and May. And it's going to continue because we are not going to resign the macroeconomic order. In monetary terms and in exchange terms, we applied a policy that surprised most people here and worldwide, because in order to reduce inflation, what is typically done by central banks is to increase the interest rates. That is why they teach you at university, and some have learned it by heart. This situation for the Argentina then would have been a fatal error, I repeat. And I will tell you why. Growing the interest rate is typically done to decompress the secondary creation of money, to decompress credit, and with that, consumption and investment, so that the economy will decelerate. So there is a balance again between the supply and demand of goods. Why couldn't we apply that in Argentina? For two reasons. First, inflation in Argentina was not due to a heating of the economy. We were far from being at 100% of installed capacity, where pressure would come from a problem of demand in an economy that was growing. Moreover, there is no credit in Argentina, so there is no secondary creation of money. Credit is 3.8% GDP points. That is nothing. But we had many interest-bearing liabilities, more than 3 monetary bases. So if we applied the basic economic theory that would have been applied by almost anybody, and that was recommended by everybody, that we should raise the rates, all we would have done is exacerbate the monetary problem, because liabilities, interests, endogenous interest would have multiplied in a context where money demand continued to collapse. So we would have had to print at those new rates 1 monetary base per month. We would have had to print or issue 1 monetary base per month. Do you know what the consequence for that is? That we would be in a hyperinflation, and it would have been impossible to leave the currency restrictions because we would have 6 or 7 more monetary bases that would have made 100% interest in US dollars, and they would be waiting for us to reduce currency restrictions to start realizing gains. So to understand that, you need to have a combination of knowledge that is very important. Many people who may have understood this concept might also have been scared because if you lower the rates, this is going to move to the US dollar, and if it goes to the US dollar, we will have a bigger gap, and therefore we would be in hell. We knew that we would be able to control that because we designed a financial product such as the BOP Real that, as I explained, when we made it public, there were 3 functions to it, and one was to buffer the exchange rate. We knew the exchange rate would not go up. That would allow us absorb pesos or local currency and also solve another big problem we had, which is the promise of 60 billion US dollars that the central bank had to give to importers. Another perfect ingredient for the hyperinflation. Imagine at what price they would have to value their products when they did not know the replenishing value. The chain between the importer and the foreign producer was broken because importers were no longer paying. So if you put all together in a cocktail, and hyperinflation was round the corner. All of that set of measures made the operation successful, made the transaction successful. Imagine that each of the previous crises that the president always talks about, and I've just mentioned, each of them, Rodrigazo, 89 and 90 and 2001, they all ended in mega crises, while here we had a combination of all 3, and the patient recovered, is healthy. So when they say we are not growing, we should not compare elements that are not comparable. We need to be realistic. And the reality is, as 84% of people thought before we took office, 84% of people thought that we would go to a hyperinflation. And I say this because I want you to understand that all this happened for a reason. And the reason is that we did our homework. It is not just by coincidence that things have improved. The surprise that things are doing or going better should not be so. What should surprise us is that we did our homework as we haven't for 100 years, and not the consequences. When you do things properly, consequences are good. The problem in Argentina was that for 100 years, we were told a lie, and for 20 years, we went in a pyramidal cheating situation. And I'd like to take this opportunity because there is a lot of credibility here. One of the main problems that we face when we do economic policy in a country like Argentina is that it is a country without credibility, and that goes against it. So you have the credibility of each country and then the credibility of your own policies. So here you will have an infinite negative creativity because Argentina has been breaking things and contracts for 100 years. It has been breaking the rules. It's been defaulting. We have done everything that we are familiar with. So we need to offset that with the credibility of our own measures. And then that is what we have tried to do from day one, starting by the president and continuing with the economic team. We have never lied to people, and from day one, we have done what we said we would, and results have been as we said, and not as some of you will hear on television, where some people are given the microphone. There are 4 or 5 people who have done everything wrong, and they continue to try and tell you, conveying their bad vibration and trying to find errors and mark things. And I'm saying this because of what I've just said. Credibility is very, very important. And if we do things wrongly, we will pay for this. But on the other side, saying just anything and saying everything wrong is something that just goes, and they will continue to talk and to teach and to preach. Even after we announced this, they continue to not understand. They still do not understand. And they continue to talk even if they don't understand anything. So I want to let you know, and I want to take this opportunity to give credit to my team. I am the face of a team, a small team, just a few of us. It's not 70, but 6 or 7, who have a huge merit. They must be seated somewhere here. They are extraordinary economists who, in addition to knowing about economy, they know about finance, and they are willing to serve. And I mean, por supuesto, the president of the central bank, Santiago Bausili, Pablo Quirno, Federico Furiase, Martín Botier, Felipe Núñez, Vladimir Merni, Diego Aduriz. A big applause to all of them.
I think that the summary, the most conclusive summary of these ideas is the fact that we have gone from virtually guaranteed hyperinflation to granting mortgage loans in only 5 months. As you can see, this is a dramatic change, and I would like to relate this fact to the passing of the so-called ley bases, the mega act of Congress proposed by President Milei. We are talking a lot about ley bases in a binary fashion, that is to say, pros and cons, based on a what-if scenario. If this happens, everything will be okay. If that happens, everything will be a disaster. I mean, the ley bases is a very important group of propositions filed by President Milei to pass in Congress so as to accelerate and speed up the improvement in our current situation. But it is very important for you to know that whether this act is passed or not, our government will not change its own way of governing. That is to say, Argentina will recover finally and eventually. Of course, it will take much more time if the act is not passed in Congress. But this core idea that we are going to recover is of the essence. If we had had no ley bases passed, and 6 months before I told you that in 6 months' time we were going to have fiscal surplus, commercial and trade surplus, buying $17 billion, reducing monetary base by 45%, having solved virtually all the issues of those 60 billion debt incurred by the Central Bank of Argentina, wiping out financial plans like Syria, having more than 69 regulations in the field of foreign trade, with mortgage loans at 30 days' time. Well, you should have thought, well, you're talking nonsense. This is absolutely fantasy for everything. We shouldn't be happy because that will not happen indeed. Well, it did. We shouldn't engage into a binary understanding of this issue, you see. So the ley bases should be enacted in Congress. That's okay. But whether it is enacted or not, Argentina will recover. The law, the act of Congress, will speed up our recovery, of course, but we'll keep on trying. We won't leave all our efforts. And next time, our president will win elections, not by 45 or 48%. No, he will win at 60% or 80%. So, do you know what will happen with that ley bases? You will see that it will really make an inroad into the Argentinian recovery because the ley bases favor us Argentinian people. And this is the reason why opposition parties are engaged in refusing to vote on this act of Congress. They won't have it passed. They don't want to do that. But of course, they are not interested in having our Argentina powerful and strong. They are here just to make money, do business, but making money to the detriment of our people. And if they want to make money, you should be doing very bad in the field of money. You shouldn't be making money. And this is the reason why we are witnessing all this criticism against the government. Why? Because everyone imagined that the government would be unable to manage the situation. And of course, advertising agencies, the media, we're absolutely sure of the fact that we're going down the drainage, right? But now we have stood up and we have recovered and we have regained a positive situation. So we cannot understand how this happened, but this happened because we have been in government. So again, whether the ley bases is passed or not, we will recover. And of course, we have to try to win the next election in order to consolidate this model. And opposition parties are absolutely afraid of this because they are not going to make money any longer to the detriment of the Argentinian people. So please, do not let them deceive us, all right? We are doing a wonderful teamwork, the president of Argentina, the cabinet of ministers, and people that are good people. We know that everyone, the people of Argentina is still supporting our government. And of course, opposition parties are really bewildered at the fact that even though they are making great efforts and they are subject to a lot of restrictions, we have a hope for them in the future. Why? Because most Argentinian citizens have understood that we are on the right track. We cannot exit from 100 years of mismanagement in government and 20 years of government embezzlement based on printing money and, of course, engaging in fraudulent practices against the people of Argentina. We can grow overnight, of course, but they are still relying on all these measures. Over the last 20 years, we have been putting in place measures that led our countries to be undercapitalized, with huge levels of abject poverty. And people have already understood that the way out is not the plan that has been put in place over the last 20 years. The right exit is our right exit. So please, do not pay attention to the fact that 30 senators in Congress reject our lay bases, because we will keep on working hard along the same track. The best way of fighting against this kind of people, true roadblockers, so to speak, figuratively speaking, and even my sister tells me you should go out into the street and demonstrate against all these opposition parties because they want to remain in the past, keep on making money, and paying no heed to citizens. Please do support this model. The best way to keep on working along this line is to muster your support, and you should empower yourselves, knowing that your individual decision all by yourselves is much more important than the passing of an act in Congress. Why? Because the economy will keep on recovering quickly, of course, gradually first and then quickly, and we are going to stick to our surpluses, and this money will go back to your pocket in the form of reduced taxation. This is what we are going to do, this is what we are doing, and this is what we see that will be a major kickoff for Argentina. Because Argentina is a rich country. Of course, we are absolutely sure about that. If we reverse the negative and adverse cycle and we reduce taxation and we can grow on the basis of an honest economy, we are going to go. So you, as businessmen and businesswomen, should empower yourselves. You yourselves as citizens should also empower your own children at home. Please, we will become better citizens. Do rely upon us. Have trust in our efforts. And we are on the right track, and we are going to make Argentina take off in a few years. We're going to live in an Argentina that no one will really believe his and her own eyes. This president, Javier Milei, has dared to stick to these dramatic changes, to put in place all these brave reforms, and we can grow. We can really reduce inflation by normal levels. I mean, all the conditions are here and have come here to stay, favorable conditions for growth and development. Yes, there is too much talking all over there by opposition journalists that only want to see drawbacks instead of benefits. But we are organizing in a very specific and, I should say, orderly fashion. We are arranging the economy and the macroeconomy economy in an orderly fashion. I am about to turn 60 years old. I have seen these adverse models before. And why have we had negative results? Because our macroeconomics was absolutely disorganized, disrupted. Now we are putting all these fields of our economy in an orderly fashion, as I told you before. Why? We have fiscal surplus, trade surplus, current account surplus. There is no peso surplus to keep on harming the economy and going against our own citizens. And of course, we attained these results not because we have engaged in an overall crisis, but because we have offered new, creative, innovative solutions. This is the very first time at which we are currently placed at a very robust, strong, solid position in Argentina. Please do rely on us. Please do believe us, because this is the key to a quick, fast-track, dramatic change for gaining recovery. And recovery is much more based on your individual decisions, on seizing opportunities, than basing yourself on the outer world, because the president of Argentina is supporting these classical liberal ideas. We have a group of ministers that have abandoned their profitable private activities to work in the public sector. They are trying to wipe out the so-called political caste, in the words of our president, classical beliefs. But this is, of course, creating much noise and resistance and opposition. But please, do not be fearful. Argentina has already taken off. With your confidence and trust and with our commitment, we are going to make Argentina great once again.
A coffee break.
Hola.
Buenos días.
Good morning. I am the moderator of this panel session with Luis Caputo. My name is Aldo Abram. I'm not be patronizing anyone in this regard, because what our people would like to hear, all the doubts about these current new measures. When you were entering the room and you were literally attacked by journalists, the million-dollar question was, why has dollar has raised its value? Well, many economists do not understand this situation as well, and people are afraid of the hike in the dollar, the US dollar quote, vis-a-vis the Argentine pesos. How can we deal with this currency unification as proposed by the government, with a major hike on the one hand first as regards the official rate of exchange, and as this gap widens up, this seems to be very far away from our consideration. How can you see these instruments that may be used so as to reduce the gap, so the parallel market dollar, so to speak, will come nearer the official put? Well, first, I'd like to tell you something. I don't want to be arrogant, but I'm not afraid of that. And why? Because of the reasons I gave you before. I am very familiar with crisis in Argentina and elsewhere in the world. Now, if you have a crisis, there is disorganized macroeconomics, but we don't have a disorganized or disrupted macroeconomy in Argentina right now. So no crisis should be expected. Now you may tell me, well, look what has happened over the last weeks from 1.1 thousand and to 1.250, so to speak. Well, this may be attributable to politics. No, pity on that. Why? Because May was a spectacular, wonderful month. Because before these political attacks, the country risk was 1.2 thousand, and the other one was 1,000, and we recorded a high in fiscal surplus, and inflation dropped by half against April 2024. And everyone said, no, it cannot go down below 7. But now the current figure, inflation rate in Argentina is with 4 point something. So if ley bases would have been passed in Congress, country risk would be 1,000 or below 1,000, you see? Now, nothing has specifically changed. There's a delay, but politics is not stupid. Politicians, I mean, are not stupid. They are here to see how you fail and how the government fails. There is no other reason than the one I had just told you. All the screaming and, of course, our mise en scène in French. I say so in Congress because they are discussing about money. They want to, politicians, I mean, they want to keep their money in their pockets, and they call all of these screaming doing politics. No, for us it's doing bad politics. So please, give me a break. This is gospel truth, the real world. They are discussing about money in their pockets, not in your pockets, of course. So please do not believe what these rioters say. They care a hoot about pensioners. No, 4 years ago, over the last 4 years, pensioners lost 24% of their wages in real terms. No one proposed any bill in Congress to improve the situation. During our administration, pensions raised by 3% in real terms. 3%, of course, of pensioners that have contributed throughout their life, and pensioners who have not contributed throughout their lives have only fell 3.5%, but pensioners who have contributed all along their life, throughout their lives, have increased by 3%. All these are excuses. Excuses for what? In order to attack fiscal deficit. They hate the fact that we have attained fiscal deficit. Our president says these rioters are torpedoing our fiscal surplus. But remember that in a couple of months, say 12 months, 1 year at most, we are going to see how these people are lying, how these politicians are lying to our citizens. But it won't take much more time than 1 year. Now, talking about the US dollar quote, there will be, or maybe, a little bit more volatility, I should say. Why? Because, of course, I'm not disregarding fundamentals, for instance, economic fundamentals. Why? Because Argentina has always ignored fundamentals. The economy has always been tied to politics in Argentina. Politics ruled over the economy in Argentina. This is the very first time in Argentina where economics is ruling over politics. Therefore, this is a change of times, a zeitgeist. And I really assure you of the fact that this President, Javier Milei, will stick on the right track. So please be reassured of the fact that when the right time will come, we will keep on making the appropriate changes as we have been doing up to now. We are going to revaluing with the fund, with the IMF, all the money, which will be this month, June 13. This is a program that we have put in place in August last year. I shared the ideas of this plan in last November. The IMF is absolutely familiar with this new rescheduling plan. We are not announcing the plan right now because we have to agree with IMF on the plan first, of course, but we're trying to have a plan put in place so that Argentina will get much more money in order to avoid currency restrictions, the SIPO restrictions, as we call it here. We want to have fiscal equilibrium or balance. We have to resolve the problem of inherited dollar stocks inherited from the previous administration to solve the currency flow and money, cash flows, the cash flows of SMEs. They can purchase money at 30 days' time, but they have 30, 60, 90, and 120 days. 75% of this issue has already been resolved. And last but not least, we want to attain an appropriate ratio between the amount of reserves held by the central bank and remunerative liabilities. Of course, we have not attained this goal yet. We are complying with fiscal balance. 2 and 3 are largely solved, and the fourth one is the measure that we are still working on. Many people say it seems that the fiscal adjustment is not attacking, so to speak, the case or diminishing government spending, reducing. But of course, when anybody takes office and sees such a predicament, like the one you have seen, how can you imagine this process of maintaining fiscal balance, adjusting accounts, and resolving this issue by implementing urgency measures?
I like your question because the only urgency measure was to increase the country tax. That was the only urgent measure, and we did because, and I will be the leader of this initiative, we had no doubt that the law would not pass, because what I'm telling about politicians is something that I know very well, and I knew they would not pass the law. At least I knew that I had to show that we did not need them. If we could not reach fiscal balance very fast and show it with the little participation that we have, or share that we have, of senators and deputies, what would have happened? We would never have been able to reach that fiscal balance because they would have asked for everything because they knew that we depended on them. So I took the risk to increase the country risk tax, despite I did not like that, because I would have an increased negotiating power with Congress and the governors. That is the reality, and that is the first tax that we are going to bring back, as I said at the beginning, although everybody said he's not going to remove it. They said the same thing about the check tax. I will repeat it. If the law is passed, so write it down, senators, write it down, because it will drop the country cost and inflation. If the law is passed, we are going to remove this increase in the tax, in the country risk tax. The rest of the things that we have done, far from being circumstantial, and it's important to see it as a change of era. All of that, let me explain this to you. There will be no more public works. Well, of course, public works were used for robbing, for stealing. There will be no more public works. And let me tell you more. Those who believe that it's circumstantial should know that this is here to stay. We had 2,600 public works. I said short ago to public works people that many of these works that have advanced should be transferred to the provinces. Remember that deficit, the 5 deficit points are focused in the nation. The provinces as a whole were at a balance. Why are these in the nation? Because the nation, the federal government, was using all this to do politics. That was politics. So they would give the money they want to the radical party politicians or to the trade union leaders or to Grabois for them to share the plans or to trust funds. And what do they give to provinces? Public works and discretionary transfers. All of that is doing politics. And that doing politics implied 4 or 5 points per annum. Let me tell you what happened with public works. The first reaction by the secretary and their team was, do you think so, giving them public works? Do you know what's happening now? They themselves are coming to ask us for us to transfer to them the public works. And now the chief of cabinet, Guillermo Francos, is signing every day with the provinces the transfer of public works to the provinces. And that's how it should be done. We should not use public works to do politics. Do you know these discretionary transfers, how much they're going to amount to? To 0. Poverty managers who were delivering assistance plans and keeping half of the money in their pockets will have to find the way to bring down this government, because Sandra Petovelo will continue to fight and she will win the battle. So those who are saying that the mixer or the blender, all of this is actually a fundamental change that is here to stay. This deficit reduction is here to stay, and that is why our accounts are improving and we are doing better. And let me add something. In the past week, in particular, there have been several governors who came to see me, several of them. I apologize to some of them if I am. They are so smiley now. They are smiling. It's not that they have so much money, but for the exception of Buenos Aires, where we have a very bad administrator who is a serial spender, the rest of the provinces are almost enjoying this moment. We have even had the paradox that the governor of Santa Cruz, a province that spent most of the time begging money with Alicia Kirchner when she was the governor. Now the province of Santa Fe came to pay back their debt. They came to pay. Good administrators have done adjustments, Some have risen their taxes. And with these two things and the increase in collections in May, themselves are surprised at what is happening. And they say, I wish the law will pass because this is much better. So let's hope that they will support it.